Welcome. Men and women make the world go round. We work together, we live together, we're friends, but when we're working together, it can create a little bit, there can be some dynamics and challenges, and especially if we're talking about a male-dominated workplace or a male-dominated industry, there can be some challenges, but also some opportunities. So whether you yourself work in a male-dominated company or industry, or if you have friends or allies or just are curious a little bit more about the topic, I am super excited to be sitting down with Rise Denver member Melanie Adams, who cut her teeth, rose, in her career in a male-dominated industry and company. Found great success working in that industry and is up to some really cool big things as a result of a lot of the lessons that she learned in that environment. So Melanie, welcome. I'm excited for us to be having this convo together.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this discussion. It's a great, relevant topic.
Well, it totally is. I mean, I'm thinking about the Rise community. So many women, they truly join Rise because they say, I don't feel like I'm having the community of strong women, or I work in a really male dominated office or industry, and I need to be around other smart, strong, successful women. So I know that this is a topic that's really relevant and important for a lot of our members. So what I would love to kick off with, if you could tell everyone so they can get to know a little bit about your background, your journey, because in particular, your background is in a very male-dominated industry of oil and gas.
That's right. I kind of fell into it too. I really wasn't expecting to stay as long as I did. I spent 18 years at one of the leading North America companies with an office in Denver. So I started as the receptionist. It was just a temporary role, but I really became fascinated with the industry, and the people around me were great. And so I decided to stay, and I did a lot of roles at first that were in the administrative side of things. I ran the mailroom. I worked as an administrative assistant for the president and planned some fun company events. But I really started moving into the operations side, which is really where I experienced kind of less females in the group by the time I got to that. So it was really an opportunity at that point to learn from the men that I was working around. Not that I didn't run into a couple of women with some kind of elbows along the way. But it, by the time I got into the operations teams, is really where I experienced, more of the just male dominated leadership teams, especially.
Yeah. So, I mean, you were not the only woman working at your company, but you said as you rose through the ranks, in particular, from more of a contributor to more leadership and management, there were fewer and fewer women at the top.
There were just fewer and fewer women. And it was unfortunate because there were a lot of talented women at the company. But I think that really the senior managers and the leadership team, all the way up to the C-suite, really just was male dominated. And it has been for a really long time. I know they're making strides. The whole industry is making strides towards diversity in not only their individual contributors, but really into their leadership teams, because they understand the value that women bring to the table when they are at those leadership tables.
Yeah. It's interesting. My husband, as you and I have talked about, works in a very male dominated industry and company as well. And ironically, I work in a very opposite industry and company. And so we have a lot of conversations about this. And something that I land on a lot is, awareness. It's like, the way things have always been, I don't think it's, in my conversations with him, it's like the more and more he's aware of it and the conversations and the opportunities, and the more and more he's excited about and open to. And as you said, they, at that company and in the industry, they recognize the value and the benefits and the growth and opportunities that comes with increasing, diversity of all sorts at companies. And so I love the awareness that comes with it, but you start with the awareness and then it's the taking action part. And that action doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately, especially in very deeply gendered industries like it sounds like that you were in as well. So it was exciting to hear that some change was being made, and I'm sure it sounds like you were a real trailblazer in that as well. I'd love to hear, if you can kind of share some examples of some of the maybe what the environment felt like. I hate to use the word challenges too much because that I don't want you to feel like you're a victim, but just some of the situations that maybe you found yourself in that was like, huh, I am not, I don't know. One of these is not like the other. Nothing you didn't fit in, but all the things that
Yeah.
made you feel like I'm a girl in this room of men.
Yeah, and kind of added challenge for me was I was probably the youngest. So I
Yeah.
was the youngest and maybe the only female in the room. And so that does add a little dynamic to that. And I think what I found is in situations where I would present the findings of something. And when I was in the regulatory team, it's black and white. The regulation says this or that, right? And the scenario was that I was presenting that this is, not a valid location, for example, and was not being heard until somebody, a male counterpart, said the literally exact same thing, and then it was like, oh, okay, well, we get it now. And I couldn't figure out why what I was saying wasn't either I was not delivering the message correctly, or they just didn't validate that I may have known what I was talking about. So navigating that really early on, I think, forced me to have a little more confidence in what I was saying, make sure I knew what I was saying, and that I was confident in that delivery of that. So I think that was helpful. And again, that might have been a scenario with another female in kind of some of those early scenarios, but kind of as I grew into different groups and got into really the corporate team, is where I felt like it was, you needed to have an ally. And I think we talked about that a little bit. I found an ally or two, and typically they're men. It's a wingman for a reason, and they would come to the meeting and support me or support my idea or support my approach, because I knew that if they validated what I was saying, it was just going to either go smoother or faster, or somebody was going to get on board a little bit easier, as long as there was my wingman saying that. And it could be a wing woman too, but I think that was helpful for me, to just know when I really needed somebody to support me, to get that buy-in before the meeting, and then be able to present with confidence.
So talk to me a little bit, like, so if someone's hearing you say this and they're like, ooh, that's a good idea. What does that look like? Either identifying who a good person at the company could be for them to approach and go to.
Yeah.
And also how to even like, how did you word that? How did you say like, hey, you
Yeah.
guys at this? Yeah.
Well, I spent a lot of time building relationships, definitely. And especially with the decision makers, if you can get a relationship with a decision maker, but really be honest with, hey, this is what I'm going to present in this meeting. This is the agenda item, and here's my approach, and here's what I'd like for your support. And I think approaching it in a way that just is asking for their support, and not necessarily saying, I need you to be my wingman. But they'll get it, because I think the more we talk about it, and like you had said, the more awareness that there is that these things exist, the guys want to support the women too. They just don't know how to do it sometimes. And if you can tell them how they can support you, then that may be more helpful for you than anything would be, that you could tell them just how to support you.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. You know, did you find that you had to change who you were or how you showed up at work or at meetings or things like that to fit in with your?
Yeah, interesting. In hindsight, I hadn't realized I was doing, I think they call it like code switch now or whatever, but I was definitely emulating the male counterparts. And I don't know if I just did that because that's what made me comfortable, but certainly, first I emulated really the women around me that were dressing up, and I was doing that. And then once I kind of moved into some different roles, I really felt like, the blazer was something that kind of equaled me in that playing field, because it was really the same garment that they were wearing. And so yeah, and the way they sit at the table and the way they carry themselves a little bit, you want to try to make yourself in that same space as them. So yeah, I think I just learned that by watching, but I was always myself, and tried to at least never lose that part of it. No matter what, I always spoke, and I always spoke up, and sometimes right or wrong, that was what I just did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does sound like you had a lot of confidence. And so I loved how you referenced too. It's like you did a lot of research. You came extra prepared to meetings, and it's easier to act or be confident when you're prepared,
Yeah.
as opposed to, hey, I'm going to just use this voice, or I'm going to say these words, or carry me in the same way, especially if that doesn't feel authentic to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that confidence is key, and probably really positively impacted how you were perceived by others, and particularly in a room full of men. They pick up on that confidence. So I think that's
Yeah, and there was certainly perception by some that I may have been aggressive, or I was pushy, or some of those, maybe adjectives that sometimes describe women in a way that wouldn't be applied to the same type of scenario for a man. So certainly that, but I again felt confident that I knew what I was doing, or that we could find a solution together, and that it wasn't going to be just me, but that I was helping steward in a certain direction. So
something that you'd said that I think is almost like a twist on what I've heard. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this, but oftentimes in a room full of men, or whether it's a particular meeting or leadership or a company, if a woman finds herself in a situation where a meeting's happening and someone says, oh, okay, Melanie, can you take notes, please? And it's like by de facto, oh, of course the woman's going to be the one taking the notes. I've heard the
mhm.
argument from anyone saying, no, I won't be taking that notes. John, I think John can do that. And I totally can see, and I see that side, but you took a different perspective, or a different approach, which I think is cool to hear, because at the end of the day, I think finding the authentic route is the best thing for any woman to do. And so you've taken a different sort of approach. So tell everybody about when you found yourself in those situations, how you handled it and how you made it work for you.
Yeah, I think that the role of taking notes is an interesting one. That when you are the only female in the room, that is either expected, just anticipated, those types of things, and maybe everyone's taking their own notes, but the formal notes for the meeting. And so I kind of realized really early on that that was an opportunity for me. It made it so that I was there for a reason, and everyone knew that, and I was driving the agenda, and that I could have a relationship with every single one of those people in that room, which were likely either my peers or above, likely, and that I could approach them with a question about the meeting or a question about the agenda item, and have a reason to do it because I was driving the meeting. And in hindsight, I think it was really important because it drove a lot of what I think were really out of the box thinking, collaborative items that we probably wouldn't have done if I wouldn't have been the one kind of driving the agenda. And if you can make them all think that it's their idea as well, it works way better. But again, I was able to control that, and that forced the relationships, which forced the skills that I needed to navigate really the male dominated world. So I didn't really think that I was navigating this just the men, but it was really again more authentic for me, and really what I ended up finding great success with.
Yeah, that's great. Talk to me about some resources, anything that, were there people that you connected with, mentors or like books,
Yeah.
events, things like that provided you with some, strength resources, as you were kind of navigating. And really, again, you're still in the industry. So still are, as you continue to navigate working in a male dominated industry.
There's a book that comes to mind that was kind of a pivotal point for me, thinking about the things I could do to change the men around me. And it's called The Feminist Fight Club. And it's not for everyone, and it is very R-rated, language wise. And so, but it has tools that I didn't realize I was already applying, or that I needed for the situation. And the wingman is one of those. And it just helps again put some fun and maybe practicality to the realism that we face in the workplace. And you may not find everything applies, but there were several things. And I, it's been a lot of years since I read that book, and that it just kind of pivoted me in a way to say, wow, I think there's things we can do to get these men to realize, how they either treat women or how they can support women, because that was equally as important for them to understand what they could do. And so that was a fun one to come across and share within our women's circle at the company, and get others kind of feeling like we had some women power going on. So that was kind of fun.
Well, and I love hearing you talk too about like a women's circle at the company or within industry as well. Actually, anyone watching this, if they haven't read, there's a piece that I'm doing with Maggie Lipscomb about affinity groups, and opportunities for internal groups for people to connect and have some of those those collaborative, finding people who are shared experiences, but then also being a brain trust to say, okay, what can we do? How can we help change the situation, not just for ourselves, but for the future as well? And so it sounds like, so there were some affinity groups either in your company, and were those helpful to you as well?
Absolutely. And I was very much a part of putting on events and trying to help support the efforts. And they did, not just were they women's circles, but they were women and men combined. And I think that was, again, the power of being able to talk about sensitive topics with other colleagues. And being a large company, there's limited opportunity to get to know people maybe outside of your own little group. And this gave really a lot of relationships to form in different groups and different parts of the company. And so I do think it was valuable. And I think they could have done more, and I think they are doing more, which is great. And I think that we'll see more women in those leadership groups in the hopefully near future, but it'll definitely be moving in that direction. I know.
Yeah, let's definitely hope so. Well, and as I referenced, we've referenced a few times, you are no longer at that company. Tell us but still in the industry, you've done something really cool with your experience to really build on that. And also, as I referenced, helping the next, the women coming up with you and behind you. So tell everyone what you're up to now.
Well, it was born out of an experience in the field, honestly, that kind of left me feeling less than confident. Really, I was, like I mentioned, maybe the only female in the boardroom. But when I got to the rig in the field, it was very different. And I might have been the only female, but it was, again, very different because the clothes that we are wearing, which are flame resistant clothing, required to be worn when you're on location, is really menswear, or it's a coverall suit, which feels and looks like a mechanic's. So, I left and went to Denver Startup Week, which is the best entrepreneur event ever. And I got really inspired to go ahead and start this clothing line of flame resistant clothing for women. It is an idea I've had for a really long time. And I always questioned why I didn't have better options. And now I'm just, it's overdue. And so I'm starting, the company is called EMBHER, and we'll be launching, hopefully late summer. And I'm really excited to just be able to represent women, in the field, because they are there. Women, this is, there's chemical manufacturers, there's utility workers that require this clothing. And there's a lot of women working in these industrial roles, and we need to be able to support them in that and give them an opportunity to wear clothing that is professionally appropriate for them, so that when they get to the field, they can have that confident conversation, and not just in that regard, emulating your male counterpart in that space just doesn't feel quite right. So our hope is that we can change that and bring a little more equality to the flame resistant clothing market for women.
Well, I love that. And then that's also going to make such an impact too, and helping women be attracted to an industry because they see that it's for them. It's not just, oh, we buy the smallest size, you got to tailor all of this. It's like, oh no, this is designed with me in mind. There is a place for me here. I'm not the odd woman out by deciding to be in this industry. I'm not alone. And I think there's some real power in that. And you are truly making a difference, not just for individual women, but for generations of women and for your industry. So kudos to
Well,
you.
I hope so. I think it's important for us to inspire kids. I'm passionate about, STEM and girls, and how they can really make an additional impact in what we're trying to do, not only in the energy industry, but really as women in the workforce.
I love it. I love it. Good luck to you. I can't wait for updates and to hear how much of EMBHER goes. So everybody is going to be staying tuned and hearing more. And you provided really great advice and insights. Your story is really inspiring. And I know it's cool with you. I know you'd be open to connecting with any other women who maybe want to
Definitely.
talk more about your experience, hear more about EMBHER, or even hey, again, not the word commiserate of like hearing more about your story, but hey, I'm in this, but like having those
Yeah.
collaborative opportunities to be like, hey, this is a situation I'm finding myself in, or what did you do in this one, or wanting to share. I think that's the power of Rise and the Rise digital community. And I'm proud that you're a Rise woman, Melanie. And
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. It's been so great. And the Rise community has just, been such a refreshing change from, maybe some elbows, and really the support and a really inspiration of the community, is what keeps me going. So thanks for having me. And I would love to connect with whoever wants to learn more or just connect.
awesome. Yeah, we'll make all your contact information available. Thank you, Melanie. Have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you online and at Rise Denver again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye.